Yo, what is up? I'm Zach. Welcome back to my channel of RWBY Mythology. Today, I'm bringing you guys the third chapter of RWBY Syndicate. If you have not seen the last two previous chapters, go check that out. This one not making any sense to you. I'll have the link of the fan fiction down below in the description box. I do not own the arts or the story. The names will be down below in the description box as well. So, like I said in the last two videos, I will give my thoughts and my review in a separate video. So, yeah. And I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and dive right into it.
The entire structure of the White Fang changed after an unfortunate bout of betrayal, insecurities, and lust for power. Before things fell apart, Sienna was close to the leadership. But now, that all becomes undone simply because she wanted things done right. "5 years ago. This is RCTV News. This just in. Massive fallout over a recent bloody shootout between the Schnee and Fang Syndicate members. Leaders Gira and Willow Schnee were unavailable for comment. The situation leaves 20 or so people dead with some in critical condition. Those injured have been carted off to Coven Hospital for treatment." Gira sat as the rest of the news broadcast went on about what led up to the altercation. It was supposed to be a simple job. Steal the Schnee's recent shipment of new weapons. However, an overzealous Faunus White Fang member grew balls too fucking big for his pants and decided to just take the shipment with his team. All of them were sprayed down like rats in a cage with gunfire from the white suits. As you would expect, the White Fang forces wound up in a shootout near the Schnee-Mistral border. "So, what are you going to do, Gira?" a tiger-stripped Faunus says standing at his left. She had been benched from this mission from leading it. She could have done this without any bloodshed. She felt as though this much death wasn't making the district any wealthier. "Nothing," Gira says standing from his rock throne. His larger form briefly shadows her before stepping to the side and pouring himself a tall glass of dark brown liquid ire. The massive fire behind his throne cracks and pops gently as the flames danced in the room, bouncing shadows everywhere. "Nothing. Those are your men out there in the streets dead, sir. Mind your tone," Gira says, growling a deep growl. "Listen, all I'm saying is we can be better than this. Don't you want a chance for Blake? Leave my seed out of your mouth, unless you want to bear the pain of failure," Gira says, getting in her face. Despite Gira's size, he was as fast as any feral beast on edge. There was nothing better than having your whole organization embarrassed and seemingly mocked by another syndicate family. This was more child's play for the Schnees. They hadn't lost as much as the White Fang had as of late. She snarls low in her throat as she lowers her eyes. She stands at attention with her hands behind her back and steps back. Gira stands upright and sips his drink as he slumps in his chair. The burn of the alcohol masked by his simmering frustration. He'd been trying to get the White Fang to a place of order and strength. He was starting to find his efforts wanting. He'd change that soon enough. "Sienna, where is Blake anyway?" Gira says, looming the darkness of the flames behind his throne. "She is with her mother, sir," Sienna replies softly. "Good. Go be with them. Leave me to my thoughts," Gira says, shooing her away with his large hand. "Yes, sir," Sienna says, turning to leave. Sienna walked the halls of the White Fang main headquarters in the center of the Mistral district. It was a large campus of metal and brick, all built by Faunus hands. The district used to be a booming place of industry in the earlier years of the city. Faunus children would be seen playing outside in the streets happily most days. Now, it was a husk of its former glory. The streets were dangerous, musty with sex work and shady deals for food and drink. Some even selling everything they had just to be a White Fang, hoping to be blessed by Gira's hands. All the gray-cloaked White Fang members in mask salute Sienna as she walked by. She kept up her side of the deal and saluted back. She wasn't happy. Not at all. She'd been trying to encourage Gira to do more, to be more, but his stubbornness was killing the White Fang. She eventually makes it to Callie's bedroom. Her nameplate burned into the metal of the door. Sienna knocks gently 3 times. Enter, a single female voice says. Sienna slides the heavy bulkhead door open and is greeted with Blake standing in the center of the room with her arms crossed. Callie was rummaging through sacks of pamphlets and flags on her bed. Oh good, you're here to stop her. Blake says as she eyed her mother. What's going on? Sienna says, showing concern. She wants to protest the rest of the city. Blake says, leaning on a wall. The room rattles faintly as Alpha Train number 1 rumbles overhead. The lanterns in the room sway gently. A bit of dust hits Blake on the head, but she doesn't flinch. I am going to save this damn family. One way or another. Callie says, grabbing her bags. Callie is second in command's attire indicated just how high she was. Her fatigues were gray and white with red buttons going down the left side. Her boots were black with the White Fangs logo on the ankles. Ma'am, I can't let you do this. It's not safe. Sienna says, grabbing hold of Callie's shoulder. You expect me to let my child suffer in this tomb? Callie says, batting Sienna's hand away. I'm right here, Mom. I'm 15 now. I can handle disagreement. Blake says. Stand down, Sienna. Stop me again and I'll wear your hide as a beret. Callie says, shouldering her bag on her shoulders. I am going to speak to a group I've heard about. I was told they could help me. Sienna rubs her temples. She had dead Faunus to honor and now the second in command was going rogue. She looks to Blake for support but Blake says nothing but deadpans back to Sienna in a way saying, you fix it. Please allow a small escort then. Please, Callie. I'm asking as a friend. Sienna says, pleading to Callie as she moved past Sienna with her bag. Callie sighs as she stops at the door. She and Sienna had been good friends for a long time. Sienna had helped her bring Blake into this world. Fine. I want to. Nothing more. Callie says, turning to Sienna and Blake. Blake finally decides to show some life and move from her perch and approaches her mother. Father will not like this at all. He's already distracted as it is with this blow up with the schnees. Fucking furless heathens, Blake says as the venom of hate dripped off her tongue. Furless they may be, but they are right to take our territory if they wish. I've discussed plans to change our fate here in this damn city, but he won't listen to me anymore. Too set in his ways, he tells me. Callie meets Blake's golden eyes. Blake was worried, but she'd been trained to be as sharp and tough as any blade. She wasn't going to be weak in front of her mother. That much she knew better. Tell your father that I'm going on my own accord. I'll be gone for some time. I need time away from this to try to make things better. I need to find this group and ask them to help us. Can you be a sharp edge for me? Callie says, rubbing a gentle thumb on Blake's cheek. Blake gives what counts as a smile and her ears fold down. Be well, mother. Blake says, holding her hand. Be well, Callie says, nodding at Sienna. Callie slides the metal door open and 2 soldiers were standing across the hall waiting for her. And then, that was the last time Blake saw her mother with her eyes open. 2 years later. This just in. A massive protest broke out into violence as a bomb was detonated among the crowd. Faunus and human casualties were reported. No one knows where the bomb came from or who could have set it. Leaders from the 4 families were asked about their involvement. The Starks would never resort to such cowardly methods of crowd control. The Starks stand firm on rights to protest regardless of the sanity of the people. Summer Rose Stark was quoted saying during a video message she'd sent in herself. The people of Remnant City deserve to have a place of safety in political discourse. Unfortunately, medicine and care are the only thing we here in the Coven District can give. May you all rest among your loved ones. Dr. Leonardo Lionheart was quoted as he oversaw the influx of injured and most likely dead bodies. No comment. Willow and Gira were both quoted saying after struggling to reach them. Sienna rushes into the medical room as soon as she heard the news. Blake was right behind her. Where is Callie Belladonna's room? Sienna screams at the clerk. She's in room 202. Ma'am, you can't. It was too late. Sienna and Blake run off towards room 202. As they rush into the room, a pair of Faunus nurses in black scrubs with red highlights were tending to the Callie as she lay bloodied. Her arm was being bound up by a calm-faced gentleman with glasses. "How is she?" Sienna says, grabbing Blake's hand. "She's unconscious," he says, cleaning up her bloody form. The oxygen mask on Callie's mouth was fogging, but only so slightly. The rest of her clothes had been cut off and thrown away. All she had on was a large quantity of wrapping and gauze on her body. "When will she wake up?" Blake asks as her ears drop. "To be determined. We will keep her under sedation for now. She suffered many contusions. A concussion from the blast and heavy blood loss. I hear a young boy with brown hair managed to push her out of the way before shrapnel tore her to pieces," he says, cleaning his hands before continuing. "I don't care what it takes. She lives, doctor, or you'll be the one on the vent," Sienna says, storming out. Blake follows behind her after giving her mother's exposed foot a quick rub of comfort. The doctor stands again and pushing his glasses up his nose. As the nurses leave, he takes a second to lick a bit of blood on the tip of his finger. A sultry grin slithers across his face. Meanwhile, back at the White Fang HQ, Sienna kicks the door in during one of Gira's battle meetings. It was a room full of at least 30 White Fang members. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Sienna says, stepping up to Gira. "Your wife is in the hospital struggling to stay alive. Why aren't you there with her? You dare." Gira growls. "In front of my men." "Damn your men. Your wife could be dying, you asshole." Sienna scolds back. "I will not be undermined in my own halls." Gira roars aloud. The room seems to shake, but it was the Alpha number 2 train rumbling by overhead, but the theatrics seem to have worked. Sienna steps back, but she's growling deep in her throat. A fierce look on her face. "Is this what the White Fang is destined for?" Sienna says before leaving. A few months later, whispers scatter around the halls of the Fang's main base. Gira and Sienna had constantly been arguing for weeks now, and people were starting to believe Gira was losing a step. Blake had been watching from the sidelines quietly. She knew she had to get ahead of this. So, she goes to her personal mentor and sword master of the White Fang. "Adam," Blake says as she steps into his quarters. He was silently mediating with his sword against his left shoulder. He routinely did this every day at 2 p.m. Adam opens his eyes and takes a deep breath. "Trouble, Miss Blake," Adam said over his shoulder. "I need your help." "You know my sword is yours," Adam said, standing. He was currently topless, his form in peak condition. Aside from the scars and marks from his own grueling training over the years, he was a one-man army under the right circumstances. His lower half was covered in training gear. His feet wrapped with dull and faded fabrics. "I want to add you to my growing team of Inner Fang. I need someone who is more pliable to my father's ambitions. Someone I can trust," Blake says. "Are we not all following your father's goals?" Adam counters calmly. "No." Sienna had upended his control. "I have people talking back to me as if I'm some fool to be played with. They think she plans a coup d'etat. She tells me she's otherwise. I think she put the idea in my mother's head. Got her hurt and now she's trying to take over," Blake said as she paced furiously. Adam just watched his student silently, letting her own fire burn brightly as it should. "So, this inner group, what is it?" Adam says, getting dressed. "The talons. It's something I've been molding on my own time. For my father, as I said. I feel this will give him the courage to do more when he has a dedicated and loyal team behind him, and I am going to give it to him. It's only right that I lead this team," Blake said. "So be it," Adam says as he turns to face her. He slides his katana between his wrapped belt on his left hip. 6 months later, after Callie's injury, tensions in the White Fang had reached a fever pitch. There were public demonstrations in the slums and streets of the Mistral district. People were shouting for Sienna in the streets. Everyone was taken aback by this news except for Sienna herself. She was alarmed and confused at the amount of support she was garnering. During this time, she kept her feelings close to her chest and tried to tamp down the surging forces from within. Gira had been careful as well. not wanting to seem like he was scared of her rising support. That was the last thing he wanted to do, was show fear and lash out. So, it became a pseudo-Cold War in the district. Those that aligned with Sienna were on one side. Those ever loyal to the White Fang and Gira on the other. Suffice to say, this turbulent time was rife for betrayals and secrets. Over time, Blake's talons grow in number, and so the following year, this time of fear and whispered chatter had revealed a cunning and devious member in the White Fang. Someone Blake had been intimate with before but didn't know of her value until now. Blake and Elia met at their usual spot. A seedy brothel where no one looks twice at those that only come into the bushy tail for one thing and one thing only. Blake sat in a booth towards the back of the brothel. Elia fades into view from the shadows that covered the rafters of the building. She drops down in the seat next to Blake with the elegance of a black widow spider trailing down a single thread of silk. "You've been calling me here more frequently, Blake," Elia says as she sheathes a blade into her arm holster. "Fine. Leave then. I'll find someone else to help me secure my father's place," Blake retorts, sipping some fine Faunus brandy. Now, Blake, you know I'm good for whatever you need. Just ask me nicely," Elia said, pulling her zipper down slightly. Elia didn't have much in the chest area, but her curves were great in the right outfit. Elia, being a spy for the White Fang, catered to more padded body suits than the white-gray fatigues of the White Fang. It was part of some stealth tech she'd stolen from a Schnee shipment some time ago, and she hadn't looked back since. As tempting as that is, I feel like I'm losing my mind. My mother hasn't woken up yet, and it's been almost 3 years. Blake says, staring forward blankly. "How is she?" Elia said, sensing the seriousness in the air. "Stable, but her brain activity is low. Meaning she's still out. She's healed for the most part, but her brain is still distant. That's what the human doctor says, at least. And you trust these furless monkeys?" Elia says, grabbing a drink from a server girl as she saunters by. Elia gets a second look before focusing back to Blake. "Coven Medical is the best medicine money or sex can buy. I'm sure she'll be fine," Blake says, drinking the last of her flask. "So, what do you want me to do? I won't charge you to keep the bed warm," Elia says, smiling as she ate the cherry out of her drink. Blake slides her a badge she'd made for her talons. It was a simple design, but it was a hard metal badge, very different from the patches that usual White Fang members wore. This your little band of sycophants. The talons," Elia says, giggling. Blake glares at her with angry eyes. Elia leans back into the booth and sips her drink. "Sheesh, fine. Not sycophants, but loyal members to serve your father, yes. Yes. I have Adam, Marrow, and you so far. Do you accept?" Blake asks, facing her now more urgently. Elia sighs. Blake looked a bit pitiful, buzzed, and seemingly desperate to ensure her father's reign was intact. With Callie out of the picture, all they had to do was kill Blake, and then Gira's throne was open to direct attack. Elia saw the web of strategy Blake was weaving. She was giving herself cover with more bodies to stand in the way of a blade meant for her heart. Genius in a way, but outright evil. Elia loves it. "When do I start?" Elia, putting the badge to her right sleeve. "It hooks into her bodysuit easy enough. Watch Sienna. If she even sharpens her blade with a different whetstone, I want to know about it," Blake says, waving down another drink. Elia giggles as Blake tries to wash away her pain with cheap Faunus brew. "You could always come back to my place. As a free roamer, I don't sleep at the base." "Too stuffy for my methods," Elia says, checking her dark orange nails. "You'd like that, wouldn't you?" Blake says, slamming her flask down, letting out a brisk sigh. "Fuck, I needed this." "You need to get laid," Elia says, standing from the booth. "Give me some good information and I may reward you with the wonders of a belladonna," Blake says, clearly feeling her drink. "I'm on top," Elia says, winking, and then she leaps into the rafters and disappears into the night. The following week saw the final selection of the talents being chosen. Blake had been eyeing her longtime friend for the last year. Blake had taken her out on a few assignments. Simple recon of the other districts. Laying traps in their extensive sewer infrastructure. Blake didn't care for current station in the White Fang, but always heard good things. During a standard training session in the lower levels of the White Fang compound, Blake stood at the side of the sparring square as the young fauness fended off her training partners with ease. She bobs and weaves like a serpent but hits like a wasp. Her attacks were strong but precise. A fine candidate for a Talon. You're getting better, my friend. Blake says to her friend as she flips one her partners with her legs by his neck and pinning him headfirst into the floor. Oh, this is nothing, she says, grunting and flipping into a boxing stance. The other two come at her quickly and throw kicks and punches. She leaps into the air at the first chance she gets and lands a split kick on both of their noses, knocking them out cold. Blake steps into the center of the mat, clapping slowly. You strike true, Blake says. Thank you, Blake, she says, tying her hair back into a ponytail. What's up? I wanted to ask you a question, Blake says, standing in front of her. Okay. How would you feel being under my command exclusively for the remainder of your time here? Blake asks smoothly. Don't I already serve you in Commander Gira? She asks, wiping herself with a towel. No. You'd be under my command. Not my father's. You would be the last of the team I'm assembling. My Talons, Blake says, producing the metal badge to her friend. Along with Marrow, she'd grown up next door to Blake when they were smaller. So, it was fitting that Blake would ask a dear friend to join. Her friends hold the metal badge. It was cold, heavy, bearing the Talons insignia on it. A bold V was etched on it. The black badge with the solid white V stood out. Blake was a patient at first, but her faces twist slightly. What's wrong? Blake asks. I really appreciate the offer, Blake, but, she says, handing the badge back to Blake. Blake looked dumbfounded for a split second, but this wasn't a good sign at all. This was one of the most powerful positions Blake was offering. She knew that. She just didn't agree with Blake on the role she'd have to take on. You disrespect my kindness, Blake says, touching the hilt of her blade. Blake glares at her peer. There was something holding her back. Blake demanded to know what it was. Why are you doing this, Blake? She says, tensing her muscles. You're one of her supporters, Blake says, turning to her left and planting a foot back, legs spread shoulder width apart, hand on hilt. Who? Blake, you know me. I would never hurt you or the commander. I'm no traitor, she says, turning away and wiping her hair with a rag. Blake follows behind her. She had to be sure. Then why not take my badge? I don't want to be your Talon, Blake. All I want to do is make a better living for myself, her friend says as she turns the corner. Blake grabs her shoulder and pushes her up against the metal wall. Then talk to me. I need to know. Do you support Sienna? Blake yells. A few White Fang soldiers stop and join Blake's side. Things were dire. She agreed with Sienna, but not in the same way. Shit, the young Fang says. Then she jumps back and throws a smoke bomb from her belt to the floor. Blake draws her blade and slashes through the smoke with an angry growl. Moments later, sirens blare as the young Fang runs through halls. She was always light on her feet. They couldn't fail her now. Not when she was so close to being out of this place she'd fallen out of love with. She knew better. She'd read the old stories. The old ways things used to be. Sienna was right, there was a better way. As she encounters other Fang members, some run by. Some questions her, but she quickly knocks them out with her fast hands and agile movements. All she needed to do was get on the next train pulling away from the headquarters to the Stark District. She had to make it there. Talon 2 and 3, Talon 1 in pursuit of Turncoat. Proceed with protocols. Understood, Talon 1. The young Fang finally makes it to the platform where the trains boarded their turntables. She fights her way to the controls. She had minutes left before someone realized she was here. By the time she manages to turn a train towards the Starks, a heavy blow cracks her across the face before she flips to her hands and knees. Whoa there, girl. Where you going? Marrow said as he brandished his dual revolvers. Get out of my way, Patsy. My beef isn't with you, she said, standing unsheathing her dual blades from her hips. Oh man, Let me tell you how I'm not the one you need to be worried about, he says, winking at her. I can't believe I almost slept with you to get into this damn place, she says, hissing at him. Your loss. Then a few shots ring out. She closes the distance quickly, blocking his predictable shots, and kicks him hard in the stomach and slashes his hands over the top. Ah, you bitch, he says, growling at her, his canine bearing at her with anger. She kicks the console's control arm and the podium jolts, suddenly sending Marrow flying off the platform as it rose into the air briefly. Alpha number 2 turns into position as she leaps off the platform and onto the train. The automated system engages as the train begins to pull off. By the time Talon 1 makes it to the platform with a squad of White Fang, she's almost out of here. Fire on her now. A barrage of bullets rings out as she takes cover behind a metal plate. If not for the fact she was moving away, she'd be dead right now. Then the open sky is above her as the train hustles down the tracks. All she needed was 10 more minutes and she'd be free. As Alpha number 2 rumbles along, she sees a figure running along the dirty rooftops of the slums. It was Adam. She rolls her eyes and prepares for a fight she wasn't sure she could win. Adam finds an angle and leaps to the top of the train, gashing his sword into the metal to stabilize his footing. Talon 2 reporting. Target sighted. Don't you see the futility in his fighting? She screams over the gashing winds. Talon 2 says nothing but draws his sword. While he was Talon 1's sword, he was a duty-bound sword. Honorable. Raise your blade or die like a mutt, he says, putting the pommel of this blade in the center of palm. His blade was pointing at his target, blade edge up. She sighs as she brings her blade up to her chest and braces for the fight. When the train whistle sounds, they lunge at each other with sparks flying as their blades meet. Talon 2 was stronger, more focused. His blade was the real deal. Made from the metal of the guns that tried to kill him. His blade was as strong as steel. Sharp as canine nurtured by 1,000 whetstones. They go back and forth at dizzying speeds. Talon 2 was calm and silent with his strikes. His footing was perfect. She could only deflect and weave for so long. He eventually gets a clean opening and manages to kick her aside. She stabs the train on the side before falling off. She screams. The train takes a hard right, her legs kicking out due to the momentum. What, are you crazy? She yells up at him as he readies a killing blow. I simply serve, Talon 2 says as he brings his sword down. In a last-minute decision, she kicks off the train and throws a small explosive at him. It pops right in front of him and sends him flying in the opposite direction. He lands in a murky waste pipe for dirty runoff water. She lands roughly on her back and rolls down a hill until she coughs up blood. She was hurting all over. She agile, but she could not take a hard blow at all. She heaves herself up and heads towards the only place she'd be safe at, the broken blade. She could see it from where she was. She pops her shoulder back into place. She gives a primal scream as she runs for her life. After a few minutes of running, she heard yells and screams from behind her. Talon 1 was right behind her with a full platoon of men and women. The White Fang spread out and give chase with Talon 1 hot on her heels. Gunfire whiz by as she shields her head and ducks down, screaming a girly scream. Just 200 yards left. That's she needed. To be in the zone, not even in the building yet. She knew the laws of the Syndicate. A bullet catches her in the leg before she rolls forwards to keep her momentum. She was crying. Desperate. Another one catches her arm before she pushes herself even harder, all the muscles in her legs tightening for a brief second, and speeds up with one final push. With a collapsing slide, she makes it into the Stark's zone. The broken blade just across the street. It sat on the border of Mistral and Vale District, a neutral space. I call for parley. I call for parley. She screams across the street. Men with gleaming metal pistols and assault rifles turn their guns up at the incoming White Fang. Talon 1 holds her sword up. They come to stop just behind the invisible line. Talon 1 was seething as she looked at someone she called friend. The men in red suits with black ties form a line. You know the rules, litter box. Back off. A parley has been heard and accepted. We witness the parley and stand down. Talon 1 says, sheathing her sword. She glares down at her friend as she's shielded by the Stark's men. Back at the White Fang base, Gira and Sienna are startled by the sudden alarms going off. The other men and women in the room scatter and run out the room. Gira could see the argument between Blake and her friend on the camera. Gira growls softly. He was losing control of his base. Sienna was on the radio issuing commands. Is this you? Gira growls as he turns, looking over his left as he bangs the control panel. What do you mean? I've been with you the whole time. Sienna snaps at him. She was tired of being accused of betraying him. Do you deny any involvement then? Gira says, turning to her. His fists were balled up tightly. His eyes were fierce and unyielding. Sienna knew she wasn't going to talk her way out of this. He was going to make an example out of her. She'd been trying to convince him for a long time she had nothing to do with this. He'd been subtly blaming her for Callie being unavailable. Blaming her for the way his men had been speaking to him lately. All of it had started with her. If you won't listen to me, then maybe I'll have to force you to see Gira. Sienna says, taking a stance. Right, you are. Gira says. The blaring red lights and the sound was their timer. Talon 2, reporting. Target sighted. Then, they lunge at each other. Sienna and Gira had been fighting for the last 20 minutes. This recent breach in security had been blamed on Sienna. Sienna of course denied the allegations. Gira saw it different. They go back and forth in the war room. Papers were scattered everywhere. Chairs knocked over. Blood splattered here and there. Sienna counters Gira's grab with her bladed brass knuckles. 5 inches in length. Serrated on the blade side. Deadly little evil weapons she'd made for herself for close quarters combat. Listen to me. I didn't do anything. Sienna growls as she held him at bay with another swipe. Lies. All you have ever done is bring sorrow to my ranks. Gira roars as he kicks her aside. She impacts the wall with a soft crunch but manages to right herself and rolls out the way as he slams a chair at her. She cleaves the chair in two and kicks him aside in the face. The doors bursts open with Blake running into the room. Gira flinches at Blake's bloodied face. Sienna goes for the mutilating blow, but Blake intercepts her with her own blade and slashes at her face. You bitch. I knew you were a traitor. You planned this diversion. Didn't you? Blake says loudly. What are you talking about? Sienna says, standing with her hands up, covered in bruises and bleeding from her back. She was tired, but she wasn't about to die like this. You can barely stand, traitor. Surrender. Blake says. Gira pops his jaw back into place and looks back to Sienna as she catches his eyes. I'm not a traitor. Sienna says, dropping to a knee. She had a collapsed lung. She could feel it. Let me finish her. Blake says, taking a step towards her. Gira places a firm large hand on her shoulder. Let the mutt suffer. Throw her out. Let her exile be a warning to all that dare cross me. And so, Sienna is dragged away. Stripped of her title, her clothes and her pride. She was no longer a Fang. She is tied up and thrown onto the next trafficking car bound for the Schnee district. She was never seen again. As the fallout simmered down, Gira looked down at this failed team his daughter had assembled. Marrow was nursing a pair of broken ribs. Adam's uniform had been soiled. Elia was nowhere to be found. A cackling pair of handclaps erupts from behind the weak formation. Oh my. I leave the base alone to the kiddies and look at how things went. Tyrion hums dramatically as he walked back to Gira's right side. You took your sweet time. Gira says, leaning back into his throne. Currying favor with Lady Stark is hard, but good business. What the hell happened here, sir? Tyrion says, nudging Blake. My daughter failed to catch a simple turncoat. Gira says in a low, annoyed voice. Father, I take. Shut up. You are all failures. I expected more. Gira says as he glares at Blake. Yes, sir. She says quietly, bowing her head. Adam stands bravely. It is my fault, sir. I was surprised by the creativity by the one that got away. So, he does have balls, Tyrion says, spinning and fanning his arms out. Then suffer first. Gira shouts, lunging at Adam and swiping his mighty hand across his face, claws extended. Ag! Adam screams as his face drips blood onto the floor. Blake runs to his side, but Gira drags her by her hair and slams her into the wall. I demand order in my fucking halls. Is that clear? Fail me again and I will send you to your mother. Gira yells at Blake as he held her up against the wall. Later that night, Blake sat with Adam as a medic team tended to Adam's punishment. They'd been working on him for about an hour now. Adam was strong throughout it all. He sat on the edge of his bed letting the medics work. Blake sat in a chair across from him, her elbows leaned on her thighs. She'd been quiet the entire time, watching as they wiped the blood and cleaned the very clear slash marks across his face. Her father had indeed rendered punishment for failure. She felt horrible. She'd gotten her mentor scarred. A walking lesson to the rest of the Fang: if they stepped out of line, spoke too loudly in his wake, or rendered themselves useless. Quiet your mind, Blake. It was better I than you. Adam spoke softly, maintaining a visage of strength despite the shaking in his hands. I've never seen father lash out like that. At me. Blake said, lowering her eyes to the floor. Tears refused to appear. The shame was painful enough. Commander Gira is rattled, to say the least. Let this be a keen lesson for the fights to come. I am loyal to you and therefore him, Adam says as the medic began to wrap his face. How will you fight now? You can't see barely anything now. Blake says, reaching out to touch his bandages. A faunus is more than their claws, and snarls Blake. I'll adapt a new style to compensate. Train my senses further. Then I will get better as well. I will have to make amends with my father. Not now though. In time. I will make the talons work. Blake says, standing up and sliding her sword onto her left hip. Be well, Blake. Adam said as the medics finished up. Be well, Adam. Blake leaves his quarters to begin the long process of making up to her father. Present day. She's making moves again, Blake says, standing on a roof as the night air blew through her long black hair. Adam stood next to her, his face bound with a black ribbon across his eyes. He shakes his head gently before turning his head to look at Blake. Don't look at me like that. I'm not making a move yet. I might be able to get to her, but I know one of the Starks can. We'll outsource our catching of our mole. Blake says, smiling. Alpha number 2 rumbles by, blaring its whistle into the cold night air.
Well then, things got a bit of heating for this chapter, and holy shit, I'm looking forward to talk about it in my review video. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Links to the fanfiction down below the description box if you guys want to read it for yourself. Links to my other channel, my social medias, will be down below the description box, and the drill. Links to my Cash App, PayPal, Ko-fi will be down below the description box and in my bio if you guys want to donate to support the channel. Again, like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. RWBY is love, RWBY is life, keep moving forward, and I'll see you guys later.